General Lorna Carr stood in the dimly lit command center, her fingers drumming softly against the edge of the console. The soft hum of machinery and the steady beep of radar filled the air as her eyes locked on the display in front of her. The alien fleet, sleek and menacing, was moving into position above Earth's atmosphere. She could feel the tension simmering in the room, the collective fear of her team, almost palpable. "They're not wasting time," she murmured, her voice steady despite the gravity of the situation. Beside her, Major Isaac Woods shifted uneasily. "They think this will be easy. They've seen our defenses, think we're weak." Carr glanced at him, her expression unreadable. "Let them think that. Arrogance is a useful tool when it's not ours." Woods fell silent, though his unease didn't fade. Carr understood the pressure weighing on him. Earth's forces had never faced anything like this before, an alien civilization with technology far beyond anything humanity had ever seen. Reports from the first wave of attacks made it clear, Earth's traditional military tactics wouldn't work here. The alien ships moved with a fluidity that defied logic, their energy weapons reducing entire battalions to ash. But Carr had something different in mind. Something the aliens hadn't counted on. "Dr. Singh," Carr said quietly, not taking her eyes off the display. The scientist stood a few feet away, her hands clasped behind her back. Dr. Yvette Singh, the mastermind behind Earth's most controversial project, stepped forward. "General? It's time. Are they ready?" Dr. Singh's face lit up with an intensity that was hard to miss. "They're ready." Carr nodded, her resolve hardening. "Deploy the colonies." There was a brief hesitation in the room, as though everyone was holding their breath. For months, rumors had circulated about the mysterious plan. No one outside of Carr's inner circle knew the specifics, only that it involved ants, an idea that had been met with ridicule from both the military and scientific communities alike. But Carr didn't care about the ridicule. She cared about survival. Dr. Singh moved swiftly to her station, fingers flying across the keyboard as she activated the neural network. Across the globe, hidden in the deepest parts of Earth's fortified cities, millions of ants began to stir. These weren't ordinary ants, they had been genetically enhanced, bred for strength, speed, and resilience. More than that, they were capable of something far more dangerous: coordination. The hive mind, normally limited to small colonies, had been expanded on a global scale. These ants, connected through a neural link developed by Singh's team, would act as Earth's most unexpected army. Carr watched the screen as tiny red dots appeared across the map, indicating the ants' deployment zones. They were small, insignificant compared to the massive alien fleet hovering above. But Carr knew better. The ants, driven by their hive intelligence and guided by human command, would soon turn the tide. "We're online," Dr. Singh announced, her voice filled with an excitement she couldn't quite contain. "The colonies are mobilizing." Carr allowed herself a small smile. "Good. General," Woods began, his voice low. "Are you sure this will work?" "They're ants." Carr didn't look at him. "The aliens think they've already won because they can't see past their own superiority. But nature has its own way of fighting back." On the screen, the alien ships began to descend, moving like silent predators over Earth's largest cities. It was happening faster than expected. The first wave of energy blasts tore through the atmosphere, striking buildings and infrastructure with terrifying precision. The ground shook beneath them, and the lights flickered briefly in the command center. "Brace for impact," Carr ordered, her voice cutting through the tension. The aliens were efficient, ruthless. Every strike was calculated, designed to cripple Earth's defenses before they could mount a real response. But they didn't know what was crawling beneath their feet. Suddenly, the ground forces reported in. "General, something's happening down here. The ants, they're moving like a coordinated swarm, right into enemy territory." Carr leaned forward, eyes narrowing. "How are they performing?" "They're unstoppable," came the astonished reply. "They've taken out enemy systems, disabling their mechs, cutting communication lines. It's like they know exactly where to hit." Carr's smile grew. "They do." The aliens were unprepared. Their technology, advanced as it was, had no countermeasures for the sheer number of ants attacking in perfect synchrony. While the alien commanders focused on overwhelming Earth's conventional military, the ants were quietly dismantling their systems from the ground up. Dr. Singh's voice cut through the noise. "General, the first wave of colonies has breached the alien command ships. We're seeing full integration. They're cutting off their power supplies." Woods shook his head in disbelief. They never saw it coming. The tide of battle was shifting. Carr could feel it. On the ground, reports continued to flood in. Alien ships were stalling, their systems failing as ants infiltrated every crack and crevice. What had once been an unbeatable force was now crumbling under the weight of millions of tiny, coordinated attacks. Carr straightened, her voice calm but firm. "This is only the beginning. We've shown them the strength of Earth's smallest fighters. Now we make them remember it." As the alien fleet faltered and their command center buzzed with the sound of their desperate transmissions, Carr knew this was the moment humanity had been waiting for. "Prepare for the counterattack," she ordered. "And let's show them what survival really looks like." The battle for Earth had only just begun. The alien warship loomed overhead, casting a menacing shadow over the city below. For a brief moment, it seemed unstoppable, a force too powerful for Earth to resist. But beneath the surface, something was stirring. Millions of ants, organized into perfect formations, moved with purpose through tunnels, sewers, and cracks in the earth. As they surged toward their targets, the ground seemed to hum with the sheer scale of their movement. In the command center, General Lorna Carr watched intently as reports flashed across the screen. Her eyes darted between the different displays, showing live feeds of the battlefield. The aliens, so confident in their advanced technology, had no idea that their doom was creeping toward them, tiny, invisible, and deadly. "The first wave is making contact," Dr. Yvette Singh announced, her voice a mix of excitement and tension. "They've reached the enemy machinery." Carr nodded, her expression unreadable. "Good. Now let's see what they can do." Down below, the ants moved in unison, swarming over the alien mechs and ground units. They crawled into engines, short-circuiting power supplies, and sabotaging key systems with precision. Alien soldiers, initially indifferent to the tiny creatures, soon found themselves overwhelmed. Their once unstoppable machines were grinding to a halt, one after another. "General!" Major Isaac Woods called from across the room. "We're seeing disruptions across the alien forces. Their command units are losing power." Carr's gaze remained fixed on the screen. She had anticipated this. For weeks, they had trained the ants to identify critical points in alien technology, targeting areas where their strikes would be most effective. The aliens, having never encountered such tactics, were caught completely off guard. "They're not going to like this," Carr murmured, a faint smile playing at the edges of her lips. Sure enough, the alien response was swift and brutal. As their machines faltered, they began firing indiscriminately, hoping to annihilate the swarming masses of ants with their energy weapons. Blue-white beams of light sliced through the streets, leaving charred craters in their wake. But for every patch of ants they destroyed, more seemed to pour in from the shadows, relentless and unyielding. Dr. Singh's fingers flew across the control board as she monitored the neural network. "We've lost a few colonies, but the majority are still intact. The network's holding. Keep them moving," Carr instructed. "We can't afford to lose momentum." The tension in the command center was thick, every set of eyes glued to the screens. Carr could feel it, an undercurrent of fear mixed with hope. They were winning, but the fight was far from over. The aliens still had numbers, and they were not known for mercy. Suddenly, a new report flashed across the screen, showing a different part of the battlefield. One of the larger alien warships was lowering itself toward the surface, positioning itself directly above a densely populated area. "They're preparing for something," Woods muttered, squinting at the screen. "That can't be good." Carr narrowed her eyes. "Dr. Singh, how fast can we deploy more colonies to that location?" Singh glanced at the map. "It'll take a few minutes. But General, if they're bringing that ship down, they might be preparing to level the entire area." Carr's jaw tightened. We need to stop them. Now. The alien warship began to glow, its underbelly lighting up with energy. It was preparing to fire, a weapon capable of obliterating the entire city block in one devastating blow. Time was running out, and Carr knew they had only moments to act. Divert everything we've got to that location, she ordered, her voice sharp with urgency. I want those ants in position before that thing goes off. Woods hesitated, his brow furrowing. But General, even with the ants, how can they stop something that big? Carr's eyes flashed with determination. They don't have to stop the ship. They just have to disable it. As Singh worked frantically to redirect the colonies, Carr's mind raced. She knew the ants were their only hope now. The neural network allowed for precise control, but even the best-laid plans had their limits. The ship's energy levels were rising, and the countdown to destruction was ticking away with terrifying speed. The command center fell silent as they watched the live feed. Tiny black swarms of ants surged toward the massive ship, moving with impossible coordination. They climbed its legs, infiltrated its joints, and disappeared into the crevices of its hull. Inside the ship, the aliens frantically attempted to shake them off, but it was no use. The ants were everywhere, silent, unstoppable, and deadly. Carr held her breath as the energy buildup in the ship began to fluctuate. The lights on its underside flickered, then dimmed. For a moment, it seemed the weapon would still fire. But then, with a sudden jolt, the entire ship shuddered. Sparks flew from its engines as systems shorted out, one by one. They're doing it, Singh whispered, her eyes wide with disbelief. The warship groaned as it began to tilt, its power fading rapidly. The ants had disabled its core systems, rendering it useless. With a final, creaking lurch, the ship crashed to the ground, sending up a cloud of dust and debris. In the command center, the tension broke. A collective sigh of relief swept through the room, but Carr's focus never wavered. Status? She demanded, her voice steady. We've confirmed the ship's down, Woods reported. No casualties on our side. Carr nodded, her expression grim. Good. But this isn't over. They'll be back, and next time, they'll be ready for us. She turned to Singh, her voice softening. But for now, well done. Dr. Singh smiled, though her hands were still trembling from the adrenaline. Thank you, General. We've bought ourselves some time. Carr took a deep breath, the weight of the battle settling on her shoulders. The aliens were relentless, but so was she. They had underestimated Earth's smallest fighters, and it had cost them. But Carr knew the war was far from won. The real fight was just beginning. Prepare the next wave, she ordered. We're going to finish this. The room fell silent once more as her team sprang into action, readying themselves for the battles to come. The command center buzzed with activity, but General Lorna Carr remained still, her gaze fixed on the screen in front of her. The alien warship lay in ruins, but the victory felt hollow. The aliens hadn't launched their full assault yet. This had been a test, and now they knew Earth's secret weapon. They'll retaliate soon, Carr said, breaking the silence. Her voice was calm, but there was an edge of urgency to it. They won't make the same mistake again. Major Isaac Woods nodded grimly. We've only bought ourselves a brief window. They'll regroup. Dr. Yvette Singh's hands trembled slightly as she worked at her station, her mind racing. The ants had performed beyond expectations, disabling one of the largest alien warships. But there was a limit to how many times they could pull off the same strategy. She could feel the weight of it, how fragile their defense was, how much rested on the ants' ability to outmaneuver enemies far more advanced than any Earth had faced before. General, Singh began, her voice unsteady. What if they've already adapted to the ants? Their tech is fast, far beyond what we can counter in real time. They might already be figuring out how to neutralize the colonies. Carr turned to her, her expression hardening. That's exactly what they're doing, Doctor. Which is why we need to be faster. Before Singh could respond, alarms blared across the room. The lights dimmed, and the large central screen flickered with a new incoming signal. The alien fleet was repositioning. Ships that had once held back were now advancing in a wide, coordinated formation. It was clear, they were done testing. Now they would destroy. "Get me a live feed on their lead ship," Carr commanded, her voice sharp. The screen blinked, and a new image came into view. The largest of the alien vessels had shifted into the forefront, its sleek black surface gleaming ominously in the light of Earth's sun. Its weaponry was already visible, glowing with the promise of devastation. "They're going for a full-scale attack," Woods muttered under his breath. Carr clenched her fists, her eyes narrowing. "We need to strike first." Woods hesitated. "The ants can't get to them in time, not this far out." Carr didn't blink. "Then we bring the fight to them. Prepare the orbital launchers." Woods stared at her. "General, the orbital launchers are untested. We don't know if they'll hold under the pressure of a full deployment. We could lose everything in one shot. We don't have the luxury of waiting," Carr said, her tone final. "Ready the launchers. We need to disable their front lines before they get within firing range of Earth." As Woods moved to relay the order, Carr turned to Singh. "Doctor, I need every ant colony we have in position to defend key infrastructure. If they break through, they'll target our command centers, power grids, everything. You'll need to be ready." Singh nodded, though the fear in her eyes was unmistakable. "I'll make sure the colonies are deployed. But General, if they adapt too quickly..." Carr cut her off. "We adapt faster." Singh swallowed hard and returned to her console, her fingers trembling as she prepared the ants for what was likely their final stand. She knew the colonies had already endured heavy losses. The neural network was struggling to keep pace with the sheer volume of commands they were sending. The ants were resilient, but they weren't invincible. Minutes passed, the tension in the room thickening with each one. Carr's gaze remained on the screen, watching as the alien fleet inched closer. She could feel the weight of every decision she'd made, every strategy she'd set in motion. There was no turning back now. "Orbital launchers are ready," Woods called out. Carr's jaw tightened. "Fire on my command." The room held its breath as Carr watched the alien ships draw nearer. Their weapons were now fully charged, the energy building within their sleek forms like the rumble of an oncoming storm. Earth's defenses were stretched to their limit, but Carr refused to let fear show. She couldn't afford it. "Not now." "Fire!" she ordered. The sound of the orbital launchers roared through the command center, reverberating off the walls. Carr watched as a barrage of projectiles shot into the sky, racing toward the alien fleet. For a brief moment, it seemed like victory was within reach, the projectiles closing in on the massive alien ships like missiles of hope. But then, the unexpected happened. One by one, the alien ships shimmered, their surfaces rippling with energy. The projectiles hit their marks, but instead of exploding on impact, they disintegrated into nothing, as if swallowed by an invisible force. "Energy shields," Woods muttered, his face draining of color. "They've adapted." The room fell into stunned silence. The aliens had learned. They'd figured out Earth's strategy and neutralized it before the fight had even begun. Carr's mind raced, but she didn't let panic take hold. "Pull the remaining forces back. We need to regroup." Woods shook his head. "There's no time. They're too close." Carr's eyes flicked toward the screen again. The alien ships were advancing, undeterred, and Earth's defenses were failing. The orbital launchers had been their last big play, and it had fallen apart before their eyes. Desperation began to creep into the corners of her mind, but she pushed it down. Suddenly, Dr. Singh's voice broke through the chaos. "General, I think I've found something." Carr turned sharply. "What is it?" Singh's eyes were wide, her fingers dancing over the controls. "The ants, they've adapted too. Some of the colonies have started responding independently, without relying on the network." Carr frowned. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying the ants are learning. They're evolving faster than we expected. If we let them act on their own, they might be able to strike in ways we haven't even thought of." Carr stared at her, the weight of the moment pressing down on her shoulders. This was it, the final gamble. Could they trust the ants to do what no human strategy could? There was no time to debate. "Do it," Carr said, her voice firm. "Let the ants take the lead." As Singh initiated the sequence, the command center watched in silence. The swarms of ants, now freed from the constraints of the neural network, began to move with a new kind of precision, faster, more aggressive, more unpredictable. Carr held her breath as she watched the screen. The alien ships were moments away from unleashing their full firepower on Earth. But this time, the ants would strike first. The command center was eerily quiet as the screens flickered with the image of Earth's last hope. Millions of ants, now free from the neural network that had once controlled them, moved with a terrifying new sense of purpose. There was no more hesitation in their movements, no need for human direction. They had evolved, and they were ready to strike. General Lorna Carr stood still, her eyes locked on the screen, but her mind was racing. She had made the call, placing humanity's fate in the hands of nature's smallest soldiers. The tension in the room was thick, almost suffocating. Her team knew that if this didn't work, it would be the end. Dr. Yvette Singh sat at her console, staring at the data flooding in. She had always believed in the ants' potential, but this was beyond anything she had ever anticipated. "They're moving faster than I expected," she murmured. "Their coordination, it's almost deliberate." Carr nodded, her voice quiet but firm. "They know what they're doing." The alien fleet, undeterred by Earth's earlier defenses, continued its relentless advance. Their energy shields shimmered, absorbing the debris and destruction of Earth's last failed assault. The warships began to shift, aligning themselves for the final strike. Carr could feel it, the impending devastation that would follow. "They're almost in position," Major Isaac Woods warned, his eyes darting between the readouts. "We've got maybe 2 minutes before they're in range to fire." Carr didn't need to be reminded of the stakes. "Hold steady. Let the ants do their work." The ants, now free of human control, moved with eerie precision. The swarm split into smaller units, some heading toward the vulnerable points of the alien warships, while others targeted key infrastructure the aliens relied on for communication and command. For the first time in this war, the ants were no longer simply tools of human strategy. They were something more, something unpredictable. The tension in the command center mounted as the seconds ticked by. The alien ships, sleek and impenetrable, gleamed with a cruel efficiency. Carr's heart pounded in her chest, though her face remained a mask of calm. "Come on," she whispered, more to herself than anyone else. "Come on." Then, without warning, the first alien ship shuddered. It was subtle at first, just a flicker of instability in its energy shield. But then the flicker grew, spreading across the surface of the vessel like a crack in glass. Carr's eyes narrowed. "What's happening?" Dr. Singh's fingers flew across her console. "The ants, they've infiltrated the shield generators. They're disabling the power cores." On the screen, the alien ship's defenses faltered, and for the first time, Carr could see the vulnerability beneath the sleek armor. The ants, moving in coordinated waves, had found their way into the ship's inner workings, dismantling its systems piece by piece. Sparks erupted from the ship's hull as critical systems failed, and moments later, a chain reaction ignited within the ship. It exploded in a brilliant flash of light, fragments of its once mighty form scattering through the sky. The command center erupted into cheers, but Carr remained focused. "One down, but there's still more coming. They're trying to regroup," Woods called out, his voice rising with urgency. "They're adjusting their formation. Looks like they're going to concentrate fire on our cities." Carr didn't blink. "Redirect the ants to the remaining ships. We can't let them get close enough to target the surface." But as soon as the order was given, Singh spoke up, her voice filled with awe. "They're already on it." Carr turned to look at her. "What do you mean?" Singh gestured to the screen. "The ants, they're moving faster than we anticipated. They're not just targeting the ships. They're anticipating the aliens' moves. They've already started swarming the ships that are repositioning." Carr's breath caught. The ants had evolved beyond anything she could have imagined. They were no longer just following orders, they were strategizing, outthinking their enemies. On the battlefield, the remaining alien ships began to experience the same disruptions as the first. One by one, their shields flickered, and their sleek exteriors cracked under the pressure. The ants moved like an unstoppable force, flooding into every nook and cranny, disabling systems with surgical precision. The once invincible fleet was falling apart, and the aliens had no idea how to stop it. Woods watched in disbelief as another ship exploded, its remains raining down in fiery shards. "I don't understand. How are they doing this?" Singh smiled, her eyes bright with realization. "The hive mind. It's evolving faster than we thought possible. They're learning from every engagement. Every time the aliens try something new, the ants adapt." Carr didn't take her eyes off the screen. "Then we let them finish what they started." As the alien fleet crumbled, their remaining forces began to retreat. The once proud warships, symbols of their technological superiority, were now nothing more than wreckage. The few ships that remained fled toward the outer atmosphere, desperate to escape the swarm that had torn them apart from the inside. The command center fell silent as the last of the alien ships disappeared from the radar. Carr exhaled slowly, her body finally releasing the tension she had been holding. The battle was over. They had won. But as the room filled with quiet relief, Carr couldn't shake the feeling that something had changed. She turned to Singh, her voice low. "The ants, they did more than we expected." Singh nodded, her expression sober. "They've evolved beyond our control. They're acting independently now." Carr's mind raced. The ants had been their salvation, but now they were something else entirely, an intelligent, autonomous force. She wasn't sure whether to feel relief or fear. "We'll need to monitor them closely," Singh said, her voice cautious. "Make sure they don't turn into a threat themselves." Carr nodded, though a part of her knew that they had crossed a line that couldn't be undone. The ants had saved humanity, but at what cost? As the adrenaline began to fade, Carr looked out over the ruined battlefield. They had survived. But this victory had raised new questions, questions that would need answers, and soon. "Prepare for a debrief," Carr ordered, her voice steady despite the uncertainty gnawing at her. "And make sure the colonies remained contained." The battle was over, but the war, against enemies both known and unknown, was far from finished.